Hello and welcome to another episode of the Elemental Companion podcast. As always, I am Heather, your host, and today we're here with Loubna. Loubna, say hi, let us know what you're doing. What are we
Hello, everyone. Welcome from the Netherlands.
Netherlands are such fun. I have flown through there exactly once, but it's nice.
Cool.
Yeah. So, what is it you do? What are we here to talk about?
Well, first of all, I'm a multi-passionate person, so there's a lot of things I can do. But with respect to time that we have together, I will focus on one thing, and that is mentoring entrepreneurs to double their productivity and revenue while having fun.
See, I am always a big fan of the having fun component of this, so I am cool with it.
Very good. I mean, to be honest, too many people are working way too hard, believing that the only road to success is through hard work. Now, I don't have a problem with hard work, but I do have a problem with hard work that is geared towards working against yourself instead of in alignment with who you are. So that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about, because I just see too many people struggling and making themselves sick doing things that they shouldn't be doing and not focusing enough on the things that they should be doing.
Yep, it's a big deal because we can make everything so much harder, and we frequently do when we're looking at, especially when I talk about it, it's from a sales context, but when we're doing all the things that traditionally they say should work and is working for other people, and then you look at it and go, well, this doesn't match who you are at all. Why are you doing this?
No, and I've had a corporate career for almost 2 decades before I became an entrepreneur. And what I've heard so many times, and I'm sure that you right now listening to this or watching this have heard this before, and that's the sentence, but we've always done it this way. Now, if you want to get to my allergic zone to the frustration is to tell me that sentence, because in my mind it goes, but if it doesn't work anymore, then why would we ever put in effort into something just because we've always done it this way?
Right.
That just seems to me crazy. So why, for God's sake? And I'm someone who is, when I look at something, the very first thing that my mind goes to is, okay, how can we do this the quickest, the most enjoyable way and get to a result? Instead of, no, but we need to talk about it a little bit more and make it a little bit more complex because it can't be this easy. And I'm like, if it's easy, why would you want to change anything? Just let's get to it. So yeah, that's one of the things that I'm thinking, okay, people really, and I've worked for very large organizations here in the Netherlands, the Dutch government, for example, so ministries where 1,200 people are working, which are very bureaucratic and hierarchical. So we've always done it this way, is a surefire way to keep doing what you're doing. And if you've ever heard of Einstein's definition of insanity, is keep doing what you've always done and expecting different results.
Well, I mean, to be mildly fair to the hierarchies here, if you get enough people to bang their head off the same piece of what, you will make a dent.
Oh, most definitely. But for me, as someone who values impact and results more than the way that we get there, is if we're not hitting the mark, if we're not reaching the goal, we're not getting the results that we want, then we need to reevaluate what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if it's working, keep going. If it's not working, then let's please change something.
Anything. Doesn't matter what. Just
doesn't matter. Let's get busy doing anything. And I'm very fond of doing experiments. That's how I love to have to adopt the mindset of, okay, let's see this as an experiment. Imagine we're in a laboratory and we're the crazy scientist like Einstein was. And we're thinking of this, okay, I don't know what's going to happen exactly, but I'm expecting this.
Yep.
So let's try it and see what happens, because that will give us the feedback to know, okay, this worked well, or this hasn't worked exactly like we expected, but it will give you the information to change.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm on my soapbox right now. So
it's totally fine. This is a soapbox I know quite well. I did not spend nearly as long in corporate as you did, by the way, because I was like briefly in a few different roles, an office administrator. And I learned the hard way through being demoted and or fired a couple of times that if you are too efficient, they do not like it.
I so resonate with that. And to be fair, I'm a little bit of a rebel. So I learned very quickly that to ask for permission up front is not the best way to go at it, especially in a hierarchical and bureaucratic organization. Because a lot of the managers have been selected to keep the status quo. So if you're trying to ramble and rattle the cages, they're going to say no to you. And as soon as they say no, you do it anyway, then you're just being...
Yeah, but if you don't
beep, beep, beep.
ask, you can sort of play a little dumb and go, oh, I didn't realize that we had to follow this exact thing.
Exactly. So to think about, I've adopted in those 2 decades of doing all sorts of things and being a rebel in an organization, adopted mantra, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission up front. So there are, I don't know how many things that I've done in organizations that when my colleagues were saying, you'll never get, that will never work. It will never be. The manager will really have your job and fire you if you go through that. And I'm like, no. I know exactly what's going to happen. And I did it anyway. So.
And I'm back. This is the other thing that happens.
Technology, ladies and gentlemen, technology. So this has happened and we've gone accustomed to this happening. Sometimes the internet just goes, I don't want to work for you anymore.
No.
And we're just back. So so I'm a little bit of a rebel. I'm more of I'm just going to do it anyways. And I've always had people around me that would say, okay, look, I know this is a crazy idea, but I know you. So if you believe in it, I'm going to help you. So I've already had one or two people. There were never many people. There were always one or two that would say, okay, I've known you long enough to know that when you get into this mood, I better just help you because it's going to be great. So I was never alone in any of it. But I got so many things done that people around me were like, I don't know how you got that done.
Well, yeah, and I think a huge part of it is just trying, and obviously you did, which is great. But the other part that I don't think very many people appreciate the extent of is it's really hard to hire and train people. They're not going to want to just throw the whole person out.
Yeah, but and at the same time, I mean, what my experience, having worked in those 2 decades, but even now as an entrepreneur, as soon as someone shows other people what is possible, even if they can't conceive it. I mean, anyone with a big vision has been called crazy when they started sharing it.
Absolutely.
Because you're out of your mind. It cannot happen. Just ask Elon Musk right now. Has been called crazy, but you're not looking for the people that call you crazy. You're looking for the people that say, you've got something in your mind. You've got a vision. I can't see exactly what you mean, but I know you well enough to know that I want to follow you and support you in the best way that I can, because it's either going to be huge or it's going to be tanked completely, but I want to be there for the very first try. And in my experience, having done a lot of these rebellious acts in organizations, is as soon as they saw that it worked and that I didn't get fired and that even managers were like, oh my God, that's really good. It got more common to do rebellious acts. But you got to know who you are, and you have to have that mindset of that crazy scientist to say, I'm willing to experiment. I know it's going to work somehow. Don't know exactly in what extent, but I'm willing to do it anyways, and not focus on trying to convince those that can't see what you can see, but focus on those that say, okay, I'm going to follow you anyway because I trust you, and let's create magic.
I'm just nodding because it was very helpful, actually. Do you ever find that when you're doing these things, and like especially when you're talking to other people as an entrepreneur and you're trying to help them figure this out for themselves, they'll sort of have an idea and then not fully commit to experimenting with the idea. They'll sort of be over here with the idea at arm's length going, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you may have heard of Mel Robbins, her 5-second rule. And one of the things that she says is our heart comes up with an idea, because it's usually your heart that sparks an idea.
Usually.
And our head talks us out of that idea. So what she's done is you got to just say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and start doing something towards implementing that idea, because you want to stop that pattern, the very normal pattern that is our brain that's going to talk you out of it, especially when that idea is something that your brain has never registered any experience in your life around, because our brain is evolutionary primed to keep us safe. So that means that imagine a big computer that gets input. So you're typing something in and the computer goes, do I know this? Yes, it's safe. Don't I know this? It gets a big red cross.
Yep.
On the screen, or the blue screen, for those of you that still remember that period in time that we had blue screens. That's what happens in your brain, and it will stop you. It will take over and say, no, don't do that, because we don't know if we're going to see a saber-tooth tiger just around the corner of that.
Yep.
So to break that pattern, that's very normal to each and every one of us. We just have to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, go. Because as soon as you start taking action, even if it's a baby step, and that gets you into achievement, dopamine is released, and that's the feel-good hormone. Your brain goes, oh, all is well. All is well. I don't have to fire the
there's no
fear
tiger
center.
right
There's
here
no
immediately.
tiger right now. We can go back to relax mode. And that is what you need to do. That's the power of, especially in the work that I do with entrepreneurs right now, in terms of goals. When you have a very big goal as an impact-driven or purpose-driven entrepreneur, is you need to figure out that very first little baby step and think of it as a journey of 1,000 steps, instead of, okay, I need to take 3 large steps, because your brain will stop you. It will stop you.
God, it will. You'll freak out at smaller amounts of huge steps than like a billion tiny steps. Because the thing is, with taking the tiny steps as well, you're not the same person on step 50 as you are on step 1, right? So you can start to, even as you go through the process, the steps can become a little bit bigger because you've built the muscle and the momentum for that, right? But yes, I wrote a post about this the other day where I think it was in my newsletter, so it won't be up on the site, but I compared it to the phenomenon of Sisyphus with his giant boulder, and you start from 0 every day and get the thing moving up the hill, to a dung beetle who starts with like nothing, but does not stop moving, and it becomes quite huge.
Yeah.
So that's where I went with that one.
But that's how, and I think that a lot of people think big, have big visions. And so they have big visions, but then keep that big vision in their mind and think, but I can't get to that big step. But what you need to do is hold that. So think big, but act small. Very first little step that you can take towards that journey. And that's what stops people, or even say, okay, it was a great idea, but not for me.
Yeah. And it's a lot easier to get into that place of, oh my God, this is too big, not for me, if you are trying to take yourself as you are right this second and become a CEO of a multi-million corporation, for example. You might get there, but you can't go from, I have not made any significant money, to I have all the money without any steps in between, or you'll just freak out. That's they notice this with lottery winners, actually. A lot of them, especially if they've never had to handle sums of money before, it's gone within a few years, or they're more miserable than they were before it happened.
Yeah, and there's actually scientific research done with lottery winners in terms of how happy are they, because most of them didn't have that sum of money, so they won it, but did it sustainably impact their level of happiness? And research shows that you get that surge of, oh my God, I've got money and my financial worries are gone. But about 6 months after, you're back to baseline happiness that you had before you even had the money before. So each and every one of us has a baseline level of happiness. And we jump back to that baseline level each and every time. But when something happens is you get that dopamine surge of, oh, it's new. But then you get used to it and it translates back. And lottery winners, more specifically, those that won millions. So we're not talking about a small amount. We're talking about millions. So it's really life-altering change. Is 6 months after they've won, they're back to their baseline happiness. It's not a sustainable happiness strategy at all.
No.
Sorry to bust any balloons right now for those of you that are watching. So winning the lottery will get you that initial dopamine surge, but it won't help you in sustainable happiness in any way, shape, or form.
Nope. I mean, it'll probably help you to not crash off a cliff and burn if you're a bit clever about it, but it's not going to make you drastically different as a person.
No. So yeah, that's it's very interesting to see.
Certainly is. All right. So while we are in fact here, shall we go on and do our questions and figure out your elemental companion?
Oh, I'm very curious to find out.
Yeah. Okay. So question 1, and it's actually really funny given what we've just been talking about, but we'll get to that. Is when you're procrastinating about selling or moving your business forward, what is the voice in your head saying to you?
You've got other things on to do.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that a little?
Well, when I'm procrastinating, which happens because I'm a human being, so we all do that, is I talk myself out of the importance and priority of the thing that I want to do for any reason. It could be because I don't want to do it at that moment in time because it requires me to do something that I don't enjoy doing, or whatever it is. So I just say, okay, but I also have to do my website, for example, or I also have to prepare for my own podcast. I will talk myself out of it and up level the urgency and priority of something else, another task on my to-do list, to downgrade the one that I actually should be doing. So that's why that voice in my head says, no, there are other things that are more important, which they are not, by the way.
No, they never are, but we like to think so.
Yeah, we just talk ourselves out of doing the things that we really need to do.
Okay, so typically the things you talk yourself out of doing, what sort of category are they in? Are they all the same thing? Or is it to do with a level of difficulty you're perceiving there? Or
that's a really good question. What I tend to do when I'm thinking about it right now is to revert back to things that I enjoy doing and I'm really good at it. So they're effortless.
Yeah.
That's what I do the most. I come back to, okay, I'm going to do something that's fun.
Fair. So it's almost like you're looking at these things and maybe they're not enjoyable in general, but they're also things you're less practiced at or no.
Yes, partly, but also because I'm someone who wants to matter. Significance is important to me. So I tend to also revert back to those activities that I know will have that impact. So for example, I would post something on my personal timeline on Facebook because I know that I will get engagement and people will start thinking and so I'll have impact because that's the feedback that I'm getting. When I post something on another platform, I barely get any engagement. I think, but does it matter that I did that? Which is irrational because most people are passively watching and listening to things on social media, then they are engaging. There's very little. But even though I know that from a rational point of view, I still choose that instant dopamine surge that I want.
Yeah. Like where it feels as if something is happening.
There's something I can see it happening. It's tangible instead of the intangible, which could more likely have more impact, but I just don't know it.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. I think I have a handle on question 1. So question 2 then, it's a little bit nicer, is when you are feeling that procrastination, how do you resolve it so you can carry on?
Oh, that's a good question. I either, when I notice myself, because that's the part I think that's most important. Sometimes I'm not even aware of it, and it's automatic pilot for me. But in those instances that I'm aware of it, I just talk myself back into, okay, no, you need to do this right now. So there's a little bit of force and pressure on, no, this is what you committed and intended to doing. So let's get back to it. All of those other things can come after you do this. That's one of the strategies I use. Number 2 is I connect it to a reward. So one of the things, I absolutely adore sushi. Adore
Oh God, who doesn't adore sushi?
Sushi. And I'm even a sushi. I call myself a sushi addict. I've even went as far as to launch a podcast that's called the Entrepreneur Sushi Club podcast, because I adore sushi. Where I interview other entrepreneurs who adore sushi just as much as I do. So I'm not the only one. That's the good news. So I say, if I do this right now, if I don't change this with another task that seems easier, then I get to have sushi today. That usually does the trick for me.
That does work quite well. I mean, I cannot fault bribery with sushi as a thing.
No, that's something that if you say sushi, I'll do it.
Solid goals. Yep.
Well, honestly, I know that from all of the experience that I've had. If you connect it to some reward, something that you look forward to having, and whether that's hot chocolate or a cake or a walk in nature, whatever it is for you, for me it's sushi, but discover what that is. And if you connect it as a reward for doing that task, you're more likely to do it.
Absolutely, especially if you get into the habit of actually giving yourself the reward you say you're going to give yourself, and not just being like, okay, we did it, what else can we do before we get to the, because that is the quickest way to make it not work for you ever again.
Exactly. No, you have if you're going to commit to a reward, then you have to give yourself that reward, because you want your brain to schedule that computer. Remember, we want to save when complete task sushi.
Yeah.
We want to save that,
and you want to reinforce that hard, or it'll stop working.
Yeah, so that's some of the things that I do.
Cool. Okay, so I have a general idea of what's going on. I might need to talk around it a little bit, because I find this actually with my guests that don't really have any huge problems with procrastination, or they've already figured it out. It's a little trickier to see under the hood which mechanism's going on, because you don't really have problems to speak of. But I can certainly tell you which pair it is, and as I explain it, one of them will stand out to you. So we'll do it this way. Okay, I'm pretty sure that the one that is niggling the most at you is within the fire-water pair. Now, to explain how that one works, fire and water together are your momentum and your why, right? It's your drive, and you're taking the small actions that we talked about before we even started. It's mostly fire. And then the water over here is the nut. It has to matter. It has to connect from these little tasks all the way up to again, we talked about this earlier. So that's where we're hearing it. Now, listening to you talk, it's pretty clear that what you do is you're quite fire skewed, in that you have your momentum. When you're getting stuck, you do reach for your rewards, or we have to do this because we've been doing this and need to keep doing this. So I would say, if someone were to put me on the spot and say, give an answer right now, it would be, actually, do you know what? Water might be your problem here a little. Because, purely from the two, water's the one where the important tasks are the one that matters, and they're usually the part where you don't see immediate results. Fire is quite urgent and on the ball, right? You do things, stuff happens. You do some more things, bigger stuff happens. That's how it works for fire, which is often why it's paired up with water, naturally, because water is a complete pain in the neck in terms of seeing the results, because it conceptualizes for larger than you can perceive. So water over here can be like, no, we're going over this way. This is our goal, up in this direction over here. And we get to by doing this, at which point, if they're not fully working together, Fire looks at it and goes, are you fucking nuts? Because if we do this, we'll get to over here, and that's kind of like over here, and it's bigger than here. And then Morty goes, but we're not trying to get over there. So that's the sort of internal arguments you'll get, which would mean that for you then, your companion would be water, because fire is the stronger half of the pair and the voice you listen to more often, which is cool. So your water part over here is the one we could listen to a little more. In terms of how out of balance you are, though, it's like when I'm doing these normally, they can be this out of balance here, like here-ish. So
yeah,
whatever, it's a thing to keep in mind. But when it is feeling that way and you're already dealing with this, okay, but just to round out the theory a little bit, it can be really helpful to sort of pause. And the way I do this is I like to journal about it and just write down why stuff matters and what the progression is. But another way of doing that is to make sure that you have only a manageable amount of goals. Like for some people, that's one goal. For others, it's like one in each area of life, whatever that plays out for. But the best way of making them work is to pick your why and your one, and then that gives Fire something to walk towards, is how that goes.
Oh, interesting. I love that.
Yeah, so I mean, and to expand on it a little more, everybody has all of the elementals. For the record, there's 6 in total. But usually what I'm looking for with these questions is the one that needs the most attention. And for you, there's minimal amounts of attention needed, to be fair. But that's where it would be.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's good to know. It's good to know.
Yeah.
Water is my companion. Well, I love it.
Yep. It's really cute too. I've illustrated all of them, so you'll see it at some point or another, but it's this little water droplet thing that just sort of buzzes along and says, look, we matter. Stuff matters. This thing we are doing matters.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, true. I love that. I really love that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, that was fairly straightforward, actually. We don't need to go into explaining what you should do next or how this plays out, because you are fine, like I have said. So, in which case, that gives us a bit more time to talk about other things, if you want. We can just misbehave a little here.
Ooh, the rebel is coming out of the box.
Isn't it, though? So, at the start, you mentioned that there were other things that you do. Would you like to pick another one to discuss?
Well, I mentioned one before, my own podcast, the Entrepreneur Sushi Club podcast, which is one of those crazy ideas I had last year.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, and it's actually a great story. So last year I was reflecting and thought, after having been an entrepreneur for many years, because I started as a side hustle next to my corporate job, and I became full-time entrepreneur in 2018. What I noticed with all of the events, trainings, even webinars, entrepreneurs talk entrepreneurship, which I know you're thinking, that's very logical, let's be honest.
Yeah, that's this whole little language.
It is, but I know that I personally am interested in the human being behind the entrepreneur. So I even had it in my corporate job. I would say, okay, who are you? And people would say, I am a manager or I am a consultant. I'm like, I'm not asking you what you do. I'm asking you who you are. So I'm like asking an identity personality question, not a behavioral question. And it fascinates me still. And I thought, but I'm interested in the personality of people. I'm interested in who are you really, and what you do is entrepreneurship or a consultant or a coach or a speaker or an author, whatever you want to call yourself. But that's what you do. But what's your personality? And my friend Gail, who's one of the co-hosts, came to visit here in the Netherlands to attend an entrepreneurial event. And we were just waiting, and it was an evening event. So just before the event starts, I said, okay, what do you want to have for dinner? Because we need to eat something before we go into the event. She said, I don't know. What would you like? And I'm like, there's only one thing that I would love to have for dinner, which is sushi.
Of course.
She goes, oh my God, I love sushi. And I'm not exaggerating in doing this at all. I'm like, okay, I think I just found another one. Being a sushi adoring entrepreneur. But her response, the bigness of her response opened up the door for me to say, well, Gail, and she's a personal brand strategist. So I said, Gail, I've had an idea that I've been talking about, but I've never done anything with it. And that is to start a community on Facebook called Entrepreneur Sushi Club. She goes, why haven't you started it already? And I'm like, it's just an idea, for God's sake. Well, this is exactly what I said earlier. You'll find that one person that will tell you, why haven't you done it already? And you're still thinking, is anyone going to like this idea? She was that person for me. So, and she made me do it right then and there. She said, grab your phone. I want you to go onto Facebook, create the Facebook group right now. And I'm going to be the first member in the group, which I did. But just like the universe has their mysterious ways of pushing you towards a direction, I created that group, but I didn't launch it. I didn't do it. Don't ask me why, but there was something not yet in place for me to do so. Fast forward that. This was September, I believe September or October last year.
Okay.
Fast forward to December. And we are both speaking at an event in Manchester. Cool. And we're on the first day, and I think it was Saturday. On the first day in the morning, all of the speakers, the majority of the speakers came live, came early. So we was just starting up and creating our booth and getting everything started. And eventually he said, okay, we're going to have a break and introduce ourselves to the other speakers, because there's a lot of us. One of them being Woon. And Woon starts introducing himself. He said, I have a podcast agency. I support entrepreneurs to create their podcast and to grow their podcast. And whilst he's introducing himself, apparently, I don't remember doing this, but apparently I said out loud, Gail, what if the Entrepreneur Sushi Club was the Entrepreneur Sushi Club podcast? She's looking at me and thought, oh my God, she said the what if words again. Yeah, which just means I'm coming up with a crazy idea. And Woon says, I'm in. I'm like, what? He said, what do you mean you're in? He said, that's a brilliant idea. Let's start that podcast. I'm like, okay. Again, you always find one or two people that say, let's do this. And you're still thinking, I don't know if it's a good idea. Fast forward the next day, Woon is on stage presenting, sharing about how you can come up with a podcast concept idea and how you can launch it and what's important and blah, blah, blah. He gives everyone in the audience the exercise, come up with your podcast concept idea. And after about 10 minutes, he says, who wants to share? I'm sitting in the back of the room with Gail talking whilst in the front of the room, the presentation, and I'm half listening to him. And again, I don't remember doing this, but I did it because Gail told me.
Yep.
Apparently, as one person shared their podcast concept, and then he said, who wants to share? Also, no one did. I got up in the middle of the conversation I was having with Gail without saying a word, got up, launched myself to the front of the room. That's the word she used. You launched yourself to the front of the room, demanded the microphone, got it, and then said, we are launching the Entrepreneur Sushi Club podcast in January 2020. Now, remember, I didn't ask Gail whether she agreed with that. I didn't ask Woon.
No, of course not. You just
launched it. They were like, Woon on the stage is going, what did she just do? Gail is going, why did she get up in the middle of a conversation? We haven't even what just happened? And I'm like, God, when something hits me, I just have to do it. I can't just wait. I'm not a meeting person. I'm just okay, this is what we're going to be doing. And I trust it. I really did. So I launched that podcast in a room of about 75 other entrepreneurs. So I committed publicly. And a couple of weeks later, we launched our very first episode where we said we want to feature the personality of other sushi adoring entrepreneurs to show that there's something very valuable when you show more of yourself as an entrepreneur, because you want to go out there and have an impact. And people need to know about you. They need to know your personality.
Well,
They need to know what matters to you, what's important to you, what your values are, how you started on your entrepreneurial journey, and how you stay sane on the entrepreneurial journey.
Also important.
Yeah, so that's what we do, and we've been consistently launching episodes every week with some amazing people, having interviewed them, and we've even had our strategy meeting just earlier today to talk about what we're going to do in 2021 for the podcast.
That is so cool.
Yes,
so cool. Don't mind me. I'm just over here quietly going, but I like sushi.
Well, I'm happy to interview you, because we're going to open up the application process for new guests for 2021.
Cool.
Because
first in line for that then.
Yeah, so definitely. And if you're interested, and if you're watching this right now, you're thinking, I want to be on that podcast, then please find the Entrepreneur Sushi Club podcast Facebook group, become part of the group, and let's get to know you, because I'm going to be launching the opening of the application process in the group first.
Excellent. I will put that in the description down below as well if you're looking for that particular link, and we'll make sure you can get over. Is there anywhere else people should go to find you online?
Yes, they can find me online. I have a business page on Facebook that has my name, so not any ridiculous other name that you can't remember right now. So if you search my name, you'll find my business page. I am on LinkedIn if that's your preferred platform. So if you want to connect with me there, cool. I'm on Instagram also if that's your playground. So any of these three will do fine. I'm gonna be honest, I play the most on my Facebook. So if you really want to get to know me more and better, then Facebook is number one.
Perfect. I will also post in there as well. So if you are looking for Loubna, you'll be able to find her.
Oh yeah, you'll find me. Yeah.
And with that, I suppose we had better wrap this up now. But thank you so much for coming on. This has been really good. And yeah, I can't wait to go and check out your podcast, actually. It sounds very cool.
Thank you. And thank you for having me and sharing with me what my elemental companion is, water. I've got that pegged. I'm just going to make some notes after we wrap up here, so to make sure that I remember that and not get lost.
Cool. Well, again, thank you for coming on. This has been another episode of the Elemental Companion podcast. As always, people watching, if you would like to find your own elemental, the free quiz on the website is in the description down below. That's also salesrpg.com. And if you want to come on the podcast yourself, I have the booking link for that too. Until next time, I will see you in the next video.
Have fun.
Bye.